Hey, Brenton. How are you today?
I'm great. Good morning. Great to be here, Kishva.
So happy to have you at Cyber Beagle Talk.
Absolutely stunning. Appreciate you having the time to meet with me. Thank you.
Yeah. Are you jet lagged?
Not, I'm over it now. So it's been a long trip coming from Australia, and it's great to see familiar faces and heading back soon.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming all the way and really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, so good. Thank you.
As we know, we're going to discuss this topic today, and I think our audience are going to love hearing what you have to say about the situation of a CISO when a company gets hacked. Is he to be blamed? So maybe we can start with that, Maybe just to give you a scenario that I'm the CISO. My company is going to get hacked. I didn't click on the phishing link. I don't take free Wi-Fi's at the airport. Why am I losing my job? Every CISO gets this kind of a thought. What do you have to say about that?
It's an interesting question, and it's probably always a thought in a CISO's mindset in terms of are they to blame when a not only a unexpected but also sometimes expected event occurs that is so dramatic but also hurtful to the organization, particularly if people and businesses are impacted in a negative way as a result from a serious cyber event. But I always default back to the quote in The Art of War, and if you talk about, know yourself, know your enemy, 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories, really comes down to how prepared are we for the unexpected. And that really goes a long way. That in today's world and what we see in practice is it's not the CISO to blame only. This is a team sport that needs a collective response from the organization to mitigate this type of risk. So at the board level, at the operational level, people, process, technology, but also our third parties, our stakeholders that we engage with. So it's a collective. And if we are prepared in the right way, then we can respond accordingly.
Right. You just mentioned, that it's a collective sport and mentioned board members as well. How can we make board members accountable?
Well, I think I always think about board members take very serious ownership or onus on understanding the financials of an organization. So what does the P&L look like? That same responsibility and accountability and the effort and to understand it should also be applied to cyber. What is the organization doing? Do I have the right people? Do I understand where my data assets are? Am I doing enough to respond accordingly? Am I testing enough? What does my data holdings look like? These are all types of assets and the right questions that need to be asked to help really gain for the board member to gain a proper picture of what risk is out there and how does this affect the organization as a whole. So I think, gone is the day that IT has always been deemed an IT issue, or for those dealing with IT, it's now become a holistic, not only board issue, but whole of organization issue. So it touches on culture as well. And if I don't have the right culture and approach to understand IT risk, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity, then you're failing on the one end of the stick or the scale.
And how can we change this culture in the organization?
Well, I think it starts off as I said to that quote, how prepared are we? And are we actually focusing with the right people, the right technology, and the right financial backing to help invest in the right areas of what that threat may look like to your organization? Because all threats are not equal to all organizations. So the necessary needs to be done to help mitigate that type of risk. Just by example, when I ask, well, what are you protecting within your organization? What is the crown jewels? Do you understand what they are? Is that related to PII, for example, personal information? If you are subject to a serious ransomware attack, that's what the threat actor wants to gain. They want to gain access to that. How is that protected? Are we having the right people and controls being put in place to help identify that risk, but if it does occur, when do I know it is happening? Not 3 months later that, what we see in many of these types of events, the threat is only picked up substantially later and not at the time when it's occurring. Yeah. So back to the earlier quote, he who is prepared or she who is prepared is part of the winning process.
So what should a CISO do in order to, get the organization prepared?
It starts not only at the IT level. It really requires, particularly if you look at cyber incident response, it starts at the governance layer. So having the right strategic approach around this risk. It also requires the right operational inputs, which are more tactical, so people, process, technology. And then if you look at the digital surface in terms of IT, what does that look like from a resilience perspective? Do I have the latest technologies in place, the right patching, the right standards that I'm applying? And then obviously to take that down. And if you go in particular to incident response, do I have the right run books in place, the incident response plans? Who is part of that? Do the people who are part and parcel of that process, do they know and understand their roles? Which is critical because, people see a policy and a process on the table, but they don't understand their particular role in that process. What am I doing? Can I follow that through? How does that tie into my HR folk, as an example? So with the right communications. And I think at the end of the day, the end user, what does the culture look like there? Do they understand that, cyber risk is a real thing today on a personal level at home, but also in the work environment? What am I doing to mitigate that risk? Do I understand my role in that regard? And am I subjecting myself to the necessary awareness and the training in that regard? So when you do see that training come through around cyber awareness, looking at events taking place, phishing emails is, one of the top 3 causes of some malicious attacks. Am I really understanding that in my role? Yeah. If I'm sitting in procurement or in HR, do I understand what the risks are in that domain specifically? Yeah. So it's as you can see, today's approach can't be in technology alone. It has to be in the strategy as a whole, understanding data holdings, but also in the people and getting the culture right.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, changing the culture is not going to happen overnight. And there are people who are working for the heck of working in the organization. They come in, they leave. Do they really understand the importance of getting hacked? I think that kind of comes with time, and especially when you are attacked. And that's when, the accountability comes
Absolutely. Khushbu, what we are dealing with are sophisticated operators, malicious actors that are very persistent, very motivated, very targeted, very persistent in terms of how they do their work. And as I said, back to the quote, if we are not prepared, if we don't understand our own areas of risk, where we're vulnerable, we can't fix that. If I ask the question, why would a threat actor look at your organization? Because they study and they understand their operating environment. They look for the low-hanging fruit. You want to at least embed, not only at the technology layer, but also at the people layer, the right defenses to build that resilience within the organization, to make it as hard as possible for a threat actor to penetrate that environment. So when you do that, they move to the next low-hanging fruit. So you want to avoid the risk. And it requires, as I said, it's a team sport. And it requires the board to bring the right investment to the business, the board to understand what those risks are, for them to ask the right questions, but for them also to support the CISO, the security personnel when there is a ask for sufficient funding to bring about the change that is required. We know that this is an evolving environment, and with the introduction of AI, even more so, risk is going to change. It's going to look differently in 6 months' time, in a year's time, in 24 months' time.
Yeah.
So we need to be prepared. If we don't, we do it at our own peril.
Yeah. You've got this forensics and investigation background, Brenton. I'm sure you would have done any number of these in your life. I'm very curious to know what goes on in a hacker's mind. Why is he so motivated to hack that particular organization? Is it ego? Is it money, of course? But are there other reasons also?
Well, Khushbu, I don't even think it's about the hackers or itself. It's there are different objectives and motivations. It could, in one instance, be totally just a monetary gain, because we know that there are threat actors and threat actor groups that actually operate as a business. So ransomware as a service is an example. But we also know that there are institutionalized organizations, or for that matter, state-owned enterprises or state-funded enterprises that do this for other reasons. So it's looking at espionage and for the purposes of really getting information from organizations, from government agencies for more state-orientated purposes. But you also have, we always talk about the external threat, but what about the internal threat? So the insider threat is unknown, or at least not appreciated as higher threat within organizations. So effectively, you have a weak link, and usually by means of people within organizations. And there's a different motivation. And in that instance, it could be pressure, it could be monetary driven, or just be opportune, an opportune time to cause, a malicious event. And usually that is coupled with very external type motives. And it could be a grudge, it could be a payback, that people want to cause harm, or for that matter, just exfiltrate information for monetary gain.
Yeah.
So we need to think differently how we deal with cyber risk today. It's, as I've just explained, it's a holistic issue we're dealing with, and not only, a breakdown in, argument's sake, as simple as patching.
Yeah. So let's take a scenario that, we've done all the necessary things required to keep an organization safe. So we've given trainings, there's a great culture, board members are, activated, everybody is aware, yet we get hacked. Is it possible?
Anything is possible. And I think the main thing is you have, I would say, the biggest aspect here is the human factor. And there's one thing that IT doesn't bring that human factor does, and that is passion. And where individuals or groups have a passion, a purpose to breach the wall, to breach that security posture, we need to be prepared for that. The biggest challenge organizations have is they don't know they have been breached. And when they find out, and usually that's 2 or 3 months later, or even longer, in these types of events, they have not been prepared. And so that requires a different mindset from a defense perspective. And it means also, how often do I test my environment? How often do I challenge my thinking? How often do I rely on threat intel? And how robust is my processes around and my controls around that process to mitigate that type of risk? So it's an ongoing evolution of, not only catching up, but sometimes retesting the process. And that depends on your threat landscape. If it's a high risk environment, you want to do that more often. You can't leave that and test it every 3 years. It just does not play out these days.
Mm. You talked about AI, enabling us. What do you think AI is bringing for us in terms of managing cyber risks?
I think there's a plus and there's obviously a negative. The plus being is that, we can assimilate information more quickly and particularly use that from a threat intel perspective to uphold our defenses and to move forward in the right areas as mentioned. But it also prevents, or should I say, it also helps organizations, particularly in their holistic approach. But on the flip side, your threat actors are also using that against you. So there's new opportunities arising as a result of embedded threat malware. And they are going to be using that as well. And it doesn't have to be sophisticated threat actors. Mm-hmm. It's now more unsophisticated, opportunistic type operators that will be using technologies to cause harm or to acquire information that they should not be having.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to get harder now that AI has come in for the hackers to hack? Or will they find a way out and, how is the world going?
Well, I think, we don't all have a silver ball to predict the future, but I think those organizations that leave it to the back end and don't really emphasize their risk posture in terms of being prepared to mitigate the risk are going to find it harder and harder to evolve when it comes to defenses. So I think we need to be on the front foot. We need to be doing more. We need to be testing more. We need to understand what that risk looks like and where does it relate to us as an organization.
Yeah.
So when I ask, it's a simple question. If I ask the operating board or the stakeholders, what does your data holdings look like? What information is crucial? You don't usually always get a positive answer to that question. And with AI, it just complicates the process. Risk is becoming more evident and it's going to become more real time.
Mm. Do you think this is the worst time for cybersecurity professionals looking at what's happening in the world around AI coming in, but also the geopolitical situation?
I think it's if I may use the word, it's a rude awakening because I think, those who are prepared will be victorious. Those who aren't or are willing to take this leap of faith in doing the right thing will be losing their battles. So I think it's a great time, personally, because it's evolving and it's requiring a new type of thinking, and it's challenging, but it's exciting.
Yeah,
that's why we're doing what we're doing. We want to be on the front end. We want to be on the front end of technology, and we want to bring about value-added services to our clients. But at the same time, we need to appreciate what the risk landscape looks like.
Yeah. You were a cop earlier in your life.
Right? Well, many moons ago.
And many years ago. Do you see any similarity in what you used to do at that time and what you're doing now as a cybersecurity professional?
I think the one thing that stands out, the human being or the human factor is always relevant. Never underestimate, because we are capable of many things. It's to really appreciate that, be it in sales, in marketing, in finance, everybody has potential. And I think sometimes we underestimate the potential of the adversary, the threat actors, or those who want to cause harm. So we need to up the ante, so to speak. So we need to be prepared. You can't take that away, and that's just part of human nature. So I think that's a common thread throughout, irrespective of the profession.
Yeah. Any message to the youngsters out there who are starting off with this journey of cybersecurity? Evolve,
Learn, take calculated risks, but be on the front foot.
Yeah. Lovely. Great. I would like to move to my next round, which is rapid fire round. It's a fun round, Brenton.
Good.
We're going to ask you some questions and you need to answer them as soon as possible.
I can't take a pause?
You can. Of course.
All right, great.
Ready?
Go for it.
Okay. What is the first step to do when you are just being subject to a ransomware attack and your computers are locked with a ransomware note?
You know, there's slogans say, what is it? Don't panic, calm, be calm.
Yeah.
No, on a serious note, you need to, there's a saying, I think within, I don't know if it's the Navy SEALs, but in a time of crisis, you never rise to your potential or to the level of your potential, but you always rise to the level of your training or the baseline of your training. And again, those who are prepared in times of crisis always fall back to what they know. And Mike Tyson's got a fantastic quote around this. Everyone's got a plan until they hit to the face. So what does your plan look like? What does your training look like? Because that will be the default you have. And if you're not prepared, you don't know what to do. So preparation is key.
Amazing. Great answer, Brenton. Okay. What's the most critical aspect of cybersecurity that you think is often overlooked?
Underestimating worst case scenarios. And if we don't, again, prepare for that, we don't know what to expect. So be prepared to expect the unexpected.
Yeah. Prepare is your mantra, looks like.
Again. Well, I've been in the trenches. So from that experience is you never can be over-prepared.
Yes. Lovely. What would you do if you are the CISO and being blamed for the recent incident? Would you educate? Would you quit? Or would you investigate?
I would always educate. The pen is mightier than the sword.
Lovely. What are the top 3 types of cyber crimes?
This is an evolving question, I would say. But what we see currently is ransomware has always been prominent. That's still ongoing, and particularly in the US is prominent. We've seen a number of issues now in Europe and in Asia Pac. I think as a result of that, an AI coming into it, business email compromise is an ongoing factor. Deep fakes have occurred in that space. But I think also now information, particularly personal information, has been used in ways to create false identities, scams, and the like is on the uprise. So your ransomware attacks, business email compromise, scams is an ongoing threat.
Right. Okay. What will you say to a CISO who doesn't want to invest in cyber?
Why are you a CISO? Are you living in the dark ages?
Okay. Which AI capability is most used in cybersecurity defense?
Well, there's various, but I would say from my subjective view, threat intel is probably one of the more advantageous ones. And also, obviously, when it comes to identifying key malicious codes from a containment and investigative perspective.
Yeah. Do you think getting hacked brings any good to an organization?
He who wants to learn, learns. They who don't. So my answer would be yes, if you can take the good out of the bad.
Right. Which hackers are difficult to handle? Chinese, North Korean, or Russians?
I would flip that question. I would say anybody is difficult to handle, depending on their sophistication, their types of malicious code, and their passion or determination.
Yeah. Right. Okay. In the cyber warfare, what is considered as a defeat and what is considered a victory?
I would say, again, for a victory, those who are prepared overcome, and those who aren't don't.
Yeah.
That would be a defeat.
Yeah. Okay. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Take more risks, calculated risks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. So from this whole podcast, what we've understood, Brenton, is that we need to prepare.
Yes.
And there's nothing called over preparation.
Prepare, test again. And know your own weaknesses.
Yeah.
Know your enemy's strengths, because sometimes you don't. Yeah. But 1,000 battles brings 1,000 victories.
Correct. And it's not one man's job.
Absolutely not.
It's a team effort. And I think these days, all the organizations should collectively take responsibility if they are compromised.
And it starts at the board, it starts at the operations, and it's legal's role as much as it's IT's role, right from the commencement of an issue, right down to the end user in terms of the training and the culture change. Yeah. And legal throughout this whole route plays a very crucial role in the process of mitigating and help understand and risk assessing the issues at hand through every stage of a response.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope CISOs enjoy this conversation, especially because we are absolutely in support of them and we understand what they go through when an organization is attacked. So thank you so much, Brenton. It was lovely speaking with you.
An absolute pleasure.
And some great answers from you. Really, really nice to have you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.